Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Follow the leader.
Following the leader.
Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Closer to my dream. Coming over me. I'm getting high. Closer to my dream. I'm getting higher and higher. Feel it in my sleep. Sometimes it feels like I'll never.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, your host and Chief White House correspondent. Over here grooving to Lil Guapole. Lil Guapole from the Bay. I was just talking to Isaac Wilson in South Carolina about my accent, my California accent. Really, the truth of the matter is, at least according to a UCLA researcher, that there are many accents. Really, you could put Guapole, E40, Kamala Harris, Snoop Dogg, Ryan Coogler. You can put us all in a room together, and we may be a part of the same family, but slightly different sound. But you better believe that Guapole track is timeless, as are people across California. Just saying. Is my California bias showing? I don't know. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm in touch, and so you be in touch. Be sure to follow me on all the social media platforms, including TikTok and Substack and Instagram, all of them at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. Just type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ, and I pop right on up. You don't got to remember all the letters. Just Dr. Nii-Q, and we got you covered. Download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or simply tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580, and there we are for your listening pleasure. Now, guess what? It's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. We are starting in Altadena, where the LA Times is reporting that there's this massive map that's helping Altadena fire victims feel seen. After the Eaton fire, a massive new physical map in Altadena is helping some come to terms with the destruction. Highland Park resident Noel McCarthy's stylized update of LA County's Eaton fire damage map can be viewed in the parking lot of West Altadena Wine and Spirits. I want to remind you that in Altadena, where more than 9,000 total structures burned, and most residents are still dealing with the fire's effects on a daily basis, a massive new physical map is helping some come to terms with the destruction, or at least start to mourn the community that they lost. Again, big shout out to the creator of this map, Highland Park resident Noel McCarthy. You can check this out in the parking lot of the West Altadena Wine and Spirits. It's an 8 by 13.5 foot map and a stylized update of LA County's Eaton fire. McCarthy, a production designer by trade, says that he's been working in Austin, Texas lately, and has found that while people ask him about the fires, they don't really understand the scale. He says he would literally pull out his phone and pull up the official LA County map and zoom in on a neighborhood. He says that he'd scroll around and people's faces would drop. Like their whole demeanor would change. Seeing the map, he said, was the only thing that effectively showed the devastation. But it was hard to get a sense of just how much of the town the fire took on a phone screen or a laptop. And so he created this large-scale map that people could stand in front of and ponder in person. He thought that would help to absorb the tragedy in its totality. And so big thanks to Mr. Noel McCarthy for putting his skills to good use as we all process what has occurred. It is still extremely disorienting. And I also want to remind you all that right here on KBLA Talk 1580, every Saturday, we bring to you the show of record when it comes to the rebuild and recovery efforts of the residents of Altadena. My colleague, James Farr, will be hosting that show every Saturday at 10 a.m. And so you need to tap in. If you want to talk to folks on the ground that are a part of this rebuild and recovery effort, it's a show hosted by someone who has deep roots in Altadena. And here at KBLA, we are committed to the folks of Altadena in the long term. And so check that show out. Conversations live right here on KBLA Talk 1580. Moving along, listen. One of my brothers, actually attended the U.S. Naval Academy. And so this next headline really hits close to home. The Naval Academy has removed nearly 400 books from its library in this new DEI purge ordered by U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth's office. The U.S. Naval Academy, again, they've removed nearly 400 books from its library after being told by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's office to review and get rid of the ones that promote diversity, equity, and inclusion. Academy officials were told to review the library late last week, and an initial search had identified about 900 books for a closer look. Well, guess what? They decided on nearly 400 to remove and began doing so on Monday, finishing before Hegseth arrived for a visit on Tuesday that had already been planned and was not connected to the library purge, officials said. A list of the books has not yet been made available, but pulling the books off the shelves is another step in the Trump administration's far-reaching efforts to eliminate so-called DEI content from federal agencies, including policies, programs, online and social media postings, and curriculum in schools. The Pentagon spokesman, Sean Parnell, said late Tuesday that, quote, all service academies are fully committed to executing and implementing President Trump's executive orders. There you have it. Can't make this stuff up. Moving along, what keeps the nation going? There is this really incredible quote. It's an African proverb, actually, that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And there are so many examples of artifacts, of stories, of works that demonstrate the power of that proverb at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Well, all of that may be in danger, as the Washington Post is reporting that the head of the African American Museum is on leave as the Smithsonian faces Trump pressure. Talking about Kevin Young, the director of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, is not currently leading the museum and has been on personal leave as of March 14th, according to an internal email obtained by the Washington Post. Young, who served as the director since 2021, is on leave for, quote, an undetermined period. That's what we heard from Kevin Gover, the Smithsonian's Undersecretary for Museums and Culture. The internal announcement, which had not previously been made public, came nearly 2 weeks before President Trump issued an executive order promising a wide-ranging overhaul of the Smithsonian, including a removal of, quote, improper ideology. That March 27th order specifically cited the African American Museum as an example of the Smithsonian promoting narratives that portray Americans and Western values as inherently harmful and oppressive, pointing to an infographic posted on the museum's website in 2020. There is no evidence that the announcement is connected to recent pressures placed on the Smithsonian, but you better believe that a number of folks in Washington, D.C. Are not taking kindly to this. I have met Kevin Young before. Kevin Young is someone that gets along with people on left, right, and center. If someone like Kevin Young has been put on leave from the African American Museum, there are a number of folks that believe that the work of the museum, the mission of the museum, is certainly in danger. When we come forward, we're switching gears a little bit. I'm delighted to welcome Jessica Radloff. She's the senior West Coast editor at Glamour magazine. You might remember prior to being Glamour's entertainment correspondent, she regularly appeared on Access Hollywood and The Talk and Good Morning America, The Today Show. And we're delighted to have her here with us as she talks about her new gig hosting the new official Big Bang Theory podcast. We'll also talk about some current entertainment media news. But when we come forward, I am delighted to welcome Jessica Radloff to A More Perfect Union. You're listening to KBLA Talk 1580. More when we come forward.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. Before the fire, Altadena was a real-life Wakanda. A thriving black oasis just 15 miles from downtown Los Angeles. 80% black residents were homeowners, building intergenerational wealth against the odds. It was a hub of black-owned businesses, churches, and cultural institutions. It stood as a symbol of black resilience and economic independence. Then, in a matter of hours, it was gone. The fire tore through homes, swallowed businesses, and left behind a painful void. But was it just an unstoppable act of nature? Or was negligence involved? Did officials ignore early warning signs? Were the response efforts delayed or insufficient? What role, if any, did corporate or government failures play? Survivors are demanding answers. Don't miss our KBLA Talk 1580 Town Hall. The Eaton-Altadena Fire, 100 days and counting, on Wednesday, April 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Robinson Park Recreation Center, 1081 North Fair Oaks in Pasadena. Join Dominic DePrima, Nii-Quartelai Quartey, James Farr, Tavis Smiley, and a panel of survivors, community leaders, and experts as we commemorate Day 100 since the wildfires flared up. And we discuss where we go from here. It's KBLA's Eaton-Altadena Fire, 100 days and counting Town Hall, Wednesday, April 16th, 4 to 6 p.m. at the Robinson Park Recreation Center in Pasadena. Light refreshments to follow. Admission is free, but sign-up is required at our KBLA1580.com website. This is a community call to action, brought to you by KBLA Talk 1580 and Quinn Emanuel Trial Lawyers. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Attention. If you owe money to the IRS, this is an urgent message. The IRS is cracking down by sending out collection letters, garnishing paychecks, seizing bank accounts, and putting liens on homes and businesses. They call it enforced compliance. And you better watch out, because penalties and interest on unpaid taxes compound daily, making it even harder to get out of debt. Don't let tax debt destroy your life. You need to call Optima Tax Relief, America's #1 tax resolution firm. They're experts in taxpayer assistance programs that can save you thousands if you qualify. A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau, Optima's resolved over $1 billion of tax debt for their clients. Let them fight on your behalf, helping to put your tax problems to rest. Call now for a free consultation.
Call 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077. 800-919-9077.
Optima Tax Relief. Some restrictions apply. For complete details, please visit OptimaTaxRelief.com.
We have no permanent friends or permanent enemies. Only permanent interests as we effort to build a more perfect union.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and really delighted to welcome the host of the official Big Bang Theory podcast, Jessica Radloff. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Dr. Quartey. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, thank you so much for being here. I mean, look, there are so many headlines coming out of Washington, D.C. that we all want to just escape just a little bit. And so I'm so glad that you're here to talk about your new project and get into some entertainment news. And so tell us about this podcast. There are a lot of fans out there of Big Bang Theory, but now you're giving us even more to enjoy. Talk to us about this podcast.
Well, were you a fan of the show? And you will not insult me if you say no, but I'm curious if you've watched even an episode.
Who hasn't watched an episode of Big Bang Theory, right? Now, I haven't followed it, but I am familiar with it.
That is very fair. And I'm glad you're very honest about it, because the story I always tell when people ask me how I really got into it is I watched the first couple episodes back in 2007 when it first premiered, but I truly didn't think it was the show for me because it was mainly 4 guys and a girl, and there was a lot of talk about science and comic books, and I thought it was cute. I liked it, but I didn't stay with it. It wasn't until it went into syndication a few years later that I really started watching these reruns and getting into it, and I was like, my God, like, what was wrong with me? Why didn't I stick with it? This is such a great, smart show. So I always tell people, if you haven't checked it out, like, try to go back and watch it because it is so smart and it's so well done. And the actors and the writing are just stellar. So I was really excited then when I was asked to host the official podcast from Warner Brothers for The Big Bang Theory. I wrote the oral history on The Big Bang Theory. So again, funny story for somebody that didn't watch it regularly in the beginning. But then I got into the show so much, started covering the show a lot, and then got to know the cast and the crew and the producers and writers, and did this 550-page book, which you can buy on Amazon or wherever you get your books, bookstores, The Big Bang Theory, the definitive inside story of the epic hit series, because that's not a mouthful. But after that came this invitation to host the podcast. And I got to tell you, it was really an amazing chance to do a deep dive into the particular episodes, because there's so much to uncover that even the most diehard fans have no idea about. Even I was shocked by some of it. And trust me, I thought I knew it all, but I was pleasantly surprised that I did not. So we get to really find out some fascinating secrets, and also fans will get to hear from some of their favorite actors, writers, people that they'd only seen their names on the screen, but then didn't know who they were, what they looked like, what they were like. So that's always fun to get to see the people that helped make your favorite show and just reveal fascinating Easter eggs and behind the scene tidbits.
I mean, I think that's extraordinary. And again, for folks who may be a little less familiar with the show, share with us sort of a little log line that just might get people a little bit interested, because again, this show's been on for 12 seasons. 12 seasons of The Big Bang Theory. It's a fan favorite of a lot of people. But for folks who are less familiar, give them some flavor for what this show's about.
So with The Big Bang Theory, you basically had 4 guys, 2 of which were theoretical physicists, Sheldon and Leonard, played by the Emmy-winning Jim Parsons and Johnny Galecki, and their friends, Raj and Wolowitz, played by Simon Helberg and Kunal Nair. And across the hall from Sheldon and Leonard, you had this woman named Penny, who was an unemployed actress trying to make her way in LA. She was a waitress at the Cheesecake Factory, and they had never met anybody like Penny. They didn't know how to talk to women. They didn't know how to interact with women. And here they've got this neighbor who really was so fascinated by them and actually took such a liking and protective nature to them. So you get to see how they kind of come together in this really sweet way that we had never seen really play out on TV before. And that's what made it so special. But then as the show went on and they added the additions of Mayim Bialik and Melissa Rauch, it really evened up the playing field for men and women. And they got into so many more, really important topics like, the pay gap and relationships and career and family. And it really became a different show in a lot of ways while still staying true to its DNA. So, that's part of what really, I think, captured people is I always say is as cool as we wanted to think we were like the cast of Friends, we're more like the cast of characters we see in The Big Bang Theory. We can be awkward. We can, have our moments thinking, is life ever going to work out for me? And yes, they dealt with that with Friends and everything too, but it was in a much more realistic way, I think, for what a lot of us deal with on The Big Bang Theory. And to me, the series just got better as it went on, and 12 seasons, and it was shattering records left and right. I mean, it truly was an extraordinary series. And in fact, it was the most streamed series of 2024. So What does that tell you? I mean, the most streamed series, that's crazy. Like, how does that happen anymore? But that's the power of The Big Bang Theory.
I mean, I'm actually not all that surprised that it was the most streamed series in 2024. I know, one of the big topics that folks were talking about in 2024, particularly the latter part during the election, was around masculinity. And so, in Big Bang Theory, the fact that, over the course of its many seasons, we started to unpack, ideas around toxic masculinity, toxic femininity. What lessons do you all sort of get into in the podcast, if any, that help us to understand just sort of how men are sort of thinking about and processing, this the world versus the women in Big Bang Theory?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I'm glad you brought it up, because when I was working on the book, the overall theme was really to talk about how this show changed so much to include women, because by the end of the series run, it was actually the most popular show with women, which a lot of people were surprised about. I got asked all the time, isn't that interesting that Glamour is covering The Big Bang Theory? I don't understand it. People still say that to me. And I'm like, well, not really, if you look at it, because you had two female scientists on the show. You also had Penny, who was trying, she kind of gave up acting because she realized it wasn't going to be a profession that could really earn her a living. So you really got into some serious topics that our readers really gravitated towards. And in the podcast, we do talk about that masculinity that was on display, especially back then, and how, a lot of the women even, the writers were so smart because they recognized this, and they gave the women a certain power in this show that the men didn't always have. You saw it in relationships, you saw it in their careers. And granted, there's things that, they got better at explaining over time, of course, because that was just 2007 was a different time. But the guys themselves didn't always kind of live in these stereotypes of what it means to be a man. And the women sometimes were more like the men in terms of taking charge and of doing things and of getting ahead. So the dynamics were always at play. And it was a fascinating case study in gender dynamics, which we do talk about in the podcast and in the book as well, because there's a reason that so many women loved this show. And it's because it was so smartly done and explained from the female point of view. And there were so many female writers on the staff too, that really were able to share their experiences in a way that we hadn't seen play out on television before.
So you think when people sort of throw around these terms like toxic masculinity, which, it's a term that's become very mainstream.
Yeah.
Do you think that the level of understanding around what that is and what that isn't, do you think that the level of understanding is where it needs to be? And would you say that the podcast really sort of picks up where the show leaves off in terms of drilling a little bit deeper, in terms of understanding the dimensions of masculinity? Because, at first glance, what may appear to be toxic may not be toxic at all.
Yeah, no, not at all. And, I'm such a feminist. And I think, unfortunately, throughout the years, that word has gotten a bad rap because people don't fully understand what it means. It just means that women want equal rights. That's it. And I thought the Big Bang Theory really handled feminism in such a smart way, because you did have these women on the show who were asking for the same respect as the guys. And sometimes they struggled with that, and it played out, and you saw that, but they really did try to look at everything from all sides. And that was one of my favorite things about covering the show, is there were so many avenues I could go down and explore with it. And, sometimes the guys didn't do things right. That's just how this world works. We're all learning. We're all a work in progress. But I got to give it to these writers, because they made these characters so multidimensional, and truly you had an equal understanding of what both the men and the women were going through on the series. So I hope we do a good job diving into that on the podcast. I think we did a good job even explaining it in the book of what the intentions always were, because this was a really smart series. And anybody that kind of brushes it off, I'm like, no, you got to go back and you got to watch it, because it really honed in on these important issues.
When we come forward, we're talking with Jessica Radloff, the senior West Coast editor for Glamour magazine, and also the host of the new official Big Bang Theory podcast. The official. Got to say that. It's the official one, right? When we come forward, we want to talk a little bit more about what fans of the Big Bang Theory can expect this season with the podcast, because Bertie told me that we're going to get a little bit more than we thought this podcast season. We'll see what Jessica says when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered about issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, you tuned into the right place. A More Perfect Union continues when we come forward.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 Things You Should Know with BIN News. Kevin Young, director of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, has been on leave since March 14th amid President Trump's push to reshape the country's cultural narrative. Stocks fell hard after hours Wednesday following President Trump's tariff announcement. The Dow tumbled over 1,000 points after news of new import taxes up to 34% on China sent markets tumbling. Black New York Attorney General Letitia James is warning residents about tax scams as the filing deadline nears. Scammers are posing as debt collectors, demanding payment via gift cards. James also reminds that millions of New Yorkers qualify for free tax filing through Direct File. And a Maryland bill backed by the Legislative Black Caucus to study reparations is set to pass the House. Black Governor Wes Moore has not said if he supports it. Critics argue it's too costly with a $3.3 billion deficit. The commission will report findings by 2027. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
It's a crowded drive out of Pasadena 210 eastbound, leaving the 134 all the way to Azusa. Tough on the 57. This is northbound in Orange from Chapman. As you continue ahead, looking a lot better passing Orange Thorpe Avenue. More slowing in Brea from Imperial Highway to the 60. The drive on the 405 in Irvine, crowding up northbound, leaving the 133 freeway all the way to Brookhurst and Fountain Valley. And Santa Clarita, 5 northbound, crowding up, or make that the 14 northbound, crowding up from the 5. A crash ahead coming up on Newhall Avenue has been cleared out of lanes. Pocket delays beyond to Sand Canyon, where another wreck is wrapping up.
Imagine a photograph of your favorite place in California. Then right in the middle of it, one piece of litter. Litter has no place in our lives, not one piece. Together, let's change that. Clean California. Zero litter is the goal. CleanCA.com.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
Here's the major question facing the UCLA women's basketball team as they prepare for their Final Four matchup Friday against Connecticut. If the game comes down to decisions and adjustments, can UCLA coach Corey Close outcoach Gina Auriemma? On paper, the coaching battle looks like a mismatch. This is the first time Close has taken a team to the Final Four. Friday's game represents the 24th time Auriemma has led UConn to the Final Four. Auriemma has won 11 national titles at UConn and has had 6 undefeated seasons. Auriemma's experience with championships on the line is part of the reason why UConn is an 8.5-point favorite. How Close handles this pressure-packed moment could be a deciding factor for UCLA in their first Final Four appearance. UCLA and UConn tip off at 6 p.m. Friday night, live coverage on ESPN. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader.
Following the leader.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
LA property owners, join us to house more veterans. By accepting veteran housing vouchers, you will receive guaranteed rent while providing a stable and safe home that will make a difference in their lives. Help house our heroes. Expedited processing and dedicated support for property owners is available because every veteran deserves a place to call home. Email houseuurvets@lacity.org, HOUSEOURVETS @lacity.org for more information.
KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Imagine a Los Angeles where everyone can thrive, where communities have access to the resources they need to succeed. That's the vision of Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. They're dedicated to improving life in LA County by providing educational support, employment assistance, and spaces for community engagement. By 2050, they want LA to be the best place to connect, create, learn, live, and play. They're working toward an education system that's well-resourced and culturally responsive, becoming a hub for artists and innovators, and making sure everyone has access to healthy food, quality healthcare, and safe housing. It's about building a future where we all have the chance to succeed. We invite you to learn more about their mission and get involved with Detours Mentoring Group, Inc. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Hit me!
National news of consequence, informed opinion,
And analysis beyond the headlines.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580, an afternoon drive time in Los Angeles, and it's still drive time here on the East Coast as well. I'm delighted to be in conversation with Jessica Radloff. She is the host of the official Big Bang Theory podcast. She's also the author of The Big Bang Theory, the definitive inside story of the epic hit series. I don't think I've ever talked to anyone who has been such a fan of a show that they got to work writing an over 500-page book about the show and everything in its orbit. What inspired you to do that?
It's funny. I did not think I'd be writing a 500+ page book on this show. If you would have asked me, I would have been like, I don't know what you're on, because that I don't know how I'm going to do that. That was really a testament to the actors and the producers who spent so much time with me. I mean, Jim Parsons, who played Sheldon, he spent over 20 hours with me talking about his time on the series. And, you know, we could have kept going. That was the thing. He was really sad when we were done. And I said, listen, I would just keep going with you because I love you so much. I will still talk to you anytime you want. I just have no more room in the book. And that was what was so fun, is just to spend all this time with them. You know, the one thing I didn't want the book to be was an encyclopedia, because I'm like, that can get boring fast. Plus you can look up online and read about every single episode. But I wanted to do a deeper dive into who these people were and the challenges that they faced and what was going on behind the scenes and the funny moments and the sad moments and everything in between. And that is what made it easy to do a 500-page book. Which could have been longer, believe it or not. There was editing involved in it because there just was so much. I mean, 12 seasons is so much, you know, and I was so thankful for the cast that they were willing to sit down. You know, they don't get paid to sit down with me and talk about all this. They wanted to because that's how much they love the show and they love talking about things. So it was really a remarkable period of time getting to do that and then have this love transfer over to a podcast. Again, never thought I'd be hosting a podcast on The Big Bang Theory. So I always tell people, you know, life is funny. It's full of surprises. You have to go where you're wanted and where you feel supported. And I'm so lucky for Chuck Lorre and Steve Milaro and Steve Holland and the team at The Big Bang Theory, because they truly gave me a gift that was so special. And you can't say no to that, because it's so incredible to get an opportunity where they trust you and they believe in you. And so I always say, you know, you make plans, yes, but also be very open to see where life takes you. And my goodness, after the last few years, I feel like we need laughter and happiness and joy more than ever before. And what better show than a series like The Big Bang Theory to kind of drive that home. So very, very grateful.
And what better gift to any fan of The Big Bang Theory? Not only do they get to listen to the official Big Bang Theory podcast, but they have a chance to relive every single detail and more on the written page if they go out and get The Big Bang Theory. Again, it's called The Definitive Inside Story of the Epic Hit Series. Jessica, I'm also hearing that with this podcast, fans are going to get to hear backstage secrets.
Yes.
Previously unheard stories. I mean, the idea that fans that tap in are going to get a little bit more. I mean, this is really raising the bar for a lot of other shows out there.
Well, here's the thing that's interesting. When I was first approached about the book, I was very hesitant because I was thinking there has been so much written about The Big Bang Theory. I cannot ask anybody in their right mind to pay $30 for a book unless they're going to read this and be like, wow, I had no idea about most of any of this. I could not justify asking someone to spend any kind of money if they were going to read a book that they have already read about all the secrets. And I was assured by some of the producers ahead of time, they're like, oh no, there's a lot that we have never talked about. And they were right. There was so much that even the actors didn't know. That's what was crazy, is so many stories that we found out that nobody had a clue about. And with the podcast, I was thinking, okay, what am I really going to find out that I have not known before? Of course, you're going to find out some secrets here and there when you're watching every episode and dissecting it. But there was so much that I didn't know. And a lot of that was due to the fact that we're able to have guests on the podcast that I actually didn't get to interview for the book because there was just no room. So people like Sarah Gilbert, who of course is starring on The Conners right now on ABC in the final season. She played Dr. Leslie Winkle on the show. Didn't get to talk to her for the book. We talked about her in the book, but I didn't have her for an interview in there. So this was a chance for us to talk about one of her most memorable episodes, to do a deep dive with so many other people from this series, like Vernee Watson, who has been such a staple in the Chuck Lorre world, to find out exactly like, how did she get involved in all these Chuck shows? So that was a blast to have her on. Christine Baranski, Ricky Lindholm, Jodie Lynn O'Keefe, who actually played the original Penny character. She was recast in during like right after the table read of the first unaired pilot, which a lot of people don't know. So to have her on, getting to talk about that experience, and then also when she came back to actually guest star on Big Bang, it was so fascinating in ways that I could have never expected. And I was kind of annoyed that I'm like, damn, I wish I had another chance to do the book. We would have to honestly do a second book because there would be no way to fit it into the first one. But there was so much stuff that I learned from doing the podcast that made it so thrilling, because that's what you want. You want to hear new information that surprises you and makes you go back and watch the series on Max with a different eye and a different appreciation for the show.
This is so cool. Oh my goodness. I don't think I have interviewed someone who has done this much to
one show.
add another dimension to a show that's already a fan favorite. Is it true that the first episode will be an exclusive look at the unaired pilot with the co-creator?
Yes. So the first episode, which you can stream on Max, and I talked to co-creator Chuck Lorre and also Peter Roth, who was chairman of Warner Brothers Television, and he was really a lot of the reason why The Big Bang Theory made it to air. We talk about that first unaired pilot, which you can see clips of on YouTube. It's not available in its entirety, but you can see clips in the deep dark web, and it's fascinating to hear from Chuck and Peter about this pilot and why it didn't work and why they had to recast the role of the female lead, which was called Katie at the time, and then of course called Penny. So there's so many secrets about that unaired pilot. And then for the second episode, we have Jimmy Burrows, who is iconic, has directed everything from Cheers to Will and Grace to Friends, and he directed both pilots. So we got to talk to him about what it was like, really, I don't want to say the word failing with the first pilot, but the first pilot didn't work for a reason. And how did they get that to turn into a better version for the second time around? So that was really cool to spend time with this legend. And, it's hard to go back all those years because people's memories kind of fade a little bit, but they still remember so much great stuff. And like, this is the chance, like, we got to do it now, because you don't want to wait too long. They're like, oh, I don't remember anything, but they're all great. They all remember so much, and it's fascinating.
Well, this is nothing less than fascinating. I mean, over the course of a 12-season run of the series, they've won 10 Emmy Awards. They've earned 55 nominations. The show was the longest-running multi-camera series in TV history with 279 episodes. And just when you thought, okay, they've checked a lot of boxes, they've done a lot of things, they've made a lot of history, here comes Jessica Radloff, who writes an over 500-page book on the series. And now we get this really incredible podcast, the official Big Bang Theory podcast, where you're going to get even more. Woo!
That's very sweet of you. I love that you're such a hype man for me. That's just so nice.
It's a lot to hype. It's a lot to hype, and it is worth the hype. You all meet the hype, and we want all of our leaders, learners, and listeners to tap in. And so if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the official Big Bang Theory podcast and get your Big Bang life, because if you thought you knew, I suspect you have no idea the levels of information you're going to get on this podcast.
Yes. And if I can say one more thing too, we never want to feel left out of a conversation. You always hate when someone is watching something and you're like, shoot, I haven't watched that, and it's hard and you want to contribute. This is a universe that keeps expanding because, of course, during Big Bang's run, Young Sheldon launched, which was the prequel to The Big Bang Theory. That ran for 7 seasons. Then once that ended, you have Georgie and Mandy's First Marriage, which is the spinoff to Young Sheldon. That currently is airing on CBS and Paramount Plus. And then there is a Big Bang Theory spinoff that is in the works actually at Max. So this universe just keeps expanding and it's not going anywhere. So I say, like, if you haven't tuned in yet, like, go back and start at the beginning, go watch all the episodes on Max, then listen to the podcast after, and it'll just all make sense. So, if you're looking for something new, you're not going to run out of chances here with episodes.
So to all of our friends, all of our leaders, learners, and listeners across the country that are exhausted by the headlines, the news headlines.
Yes.
This is a great escape. This is a great escape. Come on back, right? Because we're going to need you in the days ahead, but this is a great escape. Our thanks to Jessica Radloff, the host of the official Big Bang Theory podcast. She's also the senior West Coast editor over at Glamour Magazine and an author whose book you all need to make sure you pick up. In addition to the podcast, it's called The Big Bang Theory, the definitive inside story of the epic hit series. Thank you, Jessica.
Well done. That was a mouthful. I know it's a mouthful, and you nailed it. So
that's what we do. That's what
I know, but still, it's a lot. It's what I do too, but it's a lot of words.
Yeah. Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you for having me on. You're so sweet.
Of course. You take good care. You've been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I found out that one of my players was vaping. I brought him in and asked him, where did this stuff come from? He said, it's bigger than you think, coach. He had told me that almost everybody in my team was vaping. The next day, all the parents came in, and I said, hey, you as parents need to do your part. You guys need to figure out how, why, and when this stuff is happening, and we got to get it fixed.
Coach Sanchez and his team took vaping head on. Learn how he and other Californians are beating big tobacco at undo.org.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Yeah. The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community for our future. Subscribe today.
Notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and you. Working to build a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and I want to remind you that we have an ongoing initiative here at KBLA Talk 1580. It's called Fired But Not Forgotten, the Testimony Project. To all the fired federal workers out there, particularly the Black federal workers, we want to hear your story. In the spirit of investigative storytelling, we want to tell your story. We want to amplify your story. It's not lost on us that for generations, Black folks have been able to rely on that good government job. And that good government job is under attack. We know there are far-reaching implications. that are at odds with the mission of this show, helping to build a more perfect union. And so we want to hear from you. So send us an email at info@smileyAudiomedia.com. That's info@smileyAudiomedia.com. You can also send us a note using the KBLA app. Just click on the open mic feature and you can record your voice and press send. We want to hear from you. You can share with us on the record and off the record as you choose, but it's important that we document these stories. And if you haven't been fired from your job, but you are feeling the threat, if you're feeling threatened that you might lose your job, we also want to hear from you because here at KBLA, we got your back. All right. Finally, did y'all hear about Joe Rogan breaking with Trump? What? Joe Rogan breaks with Trump, calling the Venezuelan deportations horrific. That's right. Joe Rogan, as in the influential podcast host, Joe Rogan, as in the prominent supporter of Donald Trump, Joe Rogan. Well, he's criticized the president's administration over the deportation of a professional makeup artist and hairdresser to a prison in El Salvador, calling it horrific. Andre Jose Hernandez Romero, who's gay, had sought asylum in the United States, telling officials that he faced persecution because of his sexual orientation and political views. But U.S. immigration officers argued that the crown tattoos on his wrist were proof that he was part of the Tren de Aragua. That's the Venezuelan gang, despite Hernandez Ramirez telling them that he was not. Now, last month, he was flown from Texas to the maximum security prison in El Salvador, facility that his lawyers said was one of the worst places in the world. The world, not just El Salvador, the world. His removal comes as the administration undertakes what Trump has pledged would be a mass deportation campaign. So in the March 29th episode of his popular podcast, Rogan, who endorsed Trump for president last year, it hasn't even been a year old since he endorsed Trump. He said, quotes, "It was horrific. And people who aren't criminals are getting lassoed up and deported." Joe Rogan goes on to say, this is kind of crazy that could be possible. And that's bad for the cause. The cause is, let's get the gang members out. Everybody agrees, but let's not let innocent gay hairdressers get lumped up with gangs. The criticism was notable as prominent conservatives have generally been reluctant to speak out against Trump's administration. The Joe Rogan Experience has for years been on, it's been one of Spotify's top podcasts. Rogan, a former mixed martial arts commentator and comedian, has amassed a large following and garnered much attention and criticism for his controversial guests, including Kanye West, Elon Musk, and Alex Jones. Rogan himself has expressed support for Trump's crackdown, and in last week's episode was highly critical of Joe Biden's immigration policies, arguing that, quotes, an open border brought criminals into the U.S. In the same episode, he suggested that pro-Palestinian protests at U.S. universities had been paid for and suggested that people were being paid to protest against Tesla. But Rogan, as reported by The Guardian, argued that conducting deportation operations recklessly would cost Trump supporters, saying, quotes, "If you want compassionate people to be on board with you, you can't deport gay hairdressers seeking asylum. That's effing crazy. And then throw them in an El Salvador prison." Now, if you're like me, I'm wondering, why is Joe Rogan cherry picking this story? There are lots of stories of folks being swept up by these mass deportations. There was a father in Maryland that was wrongly deported. When brought to the attention of the administration, I think they called it an administrative error. We're sort of seeing examples of graduate students being swept up by masked individuals, being put in unmarked cars and sent to facilities in faraway states, if not deported altogether. There are so many things that are happening in the name of mass deportation. Why is Joe Rogan zeroing in on this one story, an important story, but a part of a string of stories? Hasn't even been a year since he endorsed the sitting president. Hasn't even been 100 days since the sitting president has enacted his agenda. And already one of his proudest supporters with one of the biggest microphones seems to be communicating some regret, at least when it comes to immigration. Is this a sign of what is to come? Is this an I told you so moment? Because his opponent, Kamala Harris, didn't mince words about what would happen. Oh, but maybe Joe Rogan would have known that if he had done the interview with Kamala Harris, the one that he wasn't available to do before he endorsed Donald Trump. Just saying. Maybe he might have learned something. We'll have to leave it there. My thanks to the entire village helps us produce a more perfect union each and every day, including our executive producer, Tavis Smiley, our sound engineer, Andy, our show producers, Faraji, Kim, and Art, and of course, each and every one of you. Remember, don't panic, organize. Do what you can from where you are with what you have. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, joining you live from New York City, and you have been listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
And I'll say it 50,000 times, end quote. Fulton County, Georgia officials are confirming Black Atlanta rapper Young Scooter died from a leg injury while fleeing police, not from being shot. Rumors he was shot by officers were false. No shots were fired. Chicago Alderman Brian Hopkins wants the teen curfew moved from 10 p.m. to 8 p.m. after recent violent incidents. He disagrees with Black Mayor Brandon Johnson, who favors more youth programs but says disruptive gatherings will not be tolerated. And Black Senator Cory Booker, in a 25-hour speech protesting President Trump's policies, recalled meeting the late President Jimmy Carter at Maranatha Baptist Church, saying the encounter left a lasting impression. Get BIA